The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 12 species sat in their designated places, but none of them spoke. The holographic display in the center showed a map of the galaxy, and 17 star systems glowed red. Dead systems. Empty systems. Systems that the Kethral swarm had consumed like a fire. Consumes dry grass. Ambassador Zetharan of the Valari stood at the speaking platform. His forearms trembled slightly, and his silver skin had turned pale. He was old, even by Valari standards, and he had seen many terrible things in his long life. But nothing like this. "The swarm has taken the Minor system," he said. His voice was soft, almost a whisper, but the hall speakers carried it to every ear. 14 billion lives. Gone in 6 rotations. A murmur passed through the council. The Dovani delegates lowered their heads. The insectoid Krillax clicked their mandibles nervously. Even the stone-faced Garth showed cracks in their composure. "Our combined fleet engaged them at the system's edge," Zetharan continued. 400 ships. The finest vessels from 9 species. "We thought superior numbers and technology would be enough." He pressed a button, and the hologram changed. It showed the wreckage of the fleet. Broken hulls. Frozen bodies floating in the void. And among them, thousands of swarm vessels, organic and terrible, moving like a living cloud. 37 ships survived. The swarm did not pursue them. They did not need to. They simply moved on to the next system. The Dovani counselor, an ancient female named Mirathel, rose from her seat. Her blue skin was wrinkled with age, and she moved slowly, but her eyes were sharp. "We have tried everything," she said. "We have tried direct combat. We have tried defensive formations. We have tried negotiation. The swarm does not negotiate. It does not stop. It only feeds. Then what do you suggest?" The question came from High Commander Vethkai, the Valari military leader. He was younger than most in the room, but war had aged him. "We have no more strategies. We have no more ships to spare. In 3 more cycles, the swarm will reach the core worlds." Mirathel was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke a word that made the entire council freeze. "Humans." The reaction was immediate. The Krillax delegates rose from their seats in alarm. The Gorath representative made a sound like grinding stone. Even Zetharan, who had seen the horrors of the swarm, looked frightened. "You cannot be serious," said Vethkai. "The humans are quarantined for a reason." "I am completely serious," Mirathel replied. "And I am completely desperate, as we all should be." Humanity had been discovered 40 years ago on a small blue planet at the edge of an unremarkable spiral arm. The Council's first contact team had been excited. A new species was always cause for celebration. Then they had studied the humans more closely, and the excitement had turned to horror. Earth was classified as a Class 7 death world. Its gravity was crushing. Its climate was violent and unpredictable. Its ecosystem was filled with predators, parasites, and poisons. And somehow, impossibly, humans had not only survived there, but had become the dominant species. But that was not what frightened the Council most. What frightened them was human history. Their endless wars. Their weapons of mass destruction. Their capacity for violence that seemed to have no limit. They had split the atom and used it to burn cities. They had created diseases in laboratories. They had killed each other by the millions, over and over again, for reasons that other species could barely understand. The Council had voted unanimously to quarantine Earth. The humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable. They were predators in a galaxy of peaceful herbivores, and no one wanted to see what would happen if they were let loose among the stars. Until now. "They are monsters," Vethkai said. "Their entire evolutionary history is one of violence and death." "Yes," Mirathel agreed. And that is exactly why we need them. She moved to the center of the hall, her old bones creaking with the effort. The swarm is a predator. The greatest predator this galaxy has ever seen. And what do you do when you face a predator? She looked around the room, meeting every eye. You find a bigger predator. And if the bigger predator turns on us? Zetheran asked. Then we die later instead of sooner. At least this way, we have a chance. The debate lasted for hours. Representatives argued and shouted and threatened to walk out. But in the end, when the vote was called, it passed by a single margin. A message would be sent to Earth, a plea for help. Zetheran composed the message himself. He kept it simple. He explained the threat. He explained the Council's desperation. And he ended with 4 words. We need your soldiers. The message traveled across the stars, past quarantine beacons and warning satellites, until it reached the small blue planet called Earth. And there it was received by a species that had been watching the stars for centuries, waiting for this moment. 3 days later, a response came. Zetheran was in his quarters when his communication device activated. He read the message once, then twice, then a third time. His hands began to shake. The message was short. Only 8 words. We accept. We are sending our best. Attached to the message was a file, a dossier on the unit that Earth was sending. Zetheran opened it and began to read. The unit was called Apex. 12 soldiers, handpicked from Earth's most elite military forces. Their leader was a man named Jake Lawson. The file contained his service record, and Zetheran felt his blood chill as he read it. Lawson had fought in 6 wars before his 30th year. He had killed more enemies than most soldiers saw in a lifetime. And according to the psychological evaluation, he was considered stable and well-adjusted by human standards. By human standards. Zetheran closed the file and sat in the darkness of his quarters for a long time. He had asked for soldiers. He had asked for help. But as he read about the humans who were coming, he began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the swarm was moving, consuming, growing. And somewhere else, on a small blue planet, 12 predators were preparing to hunt. The galaxy had asked for soldiers. Humanity was sending something else entirely. The Allied fleet waited in formation around Defense Station Korath 7. 300 ships from 9 different species, their hulls gleaming with elegant curves and polished metal. They were the pride of the Galactic Council, built for beauty as much as war. Admiral Vethkai stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the empty space where the humans would arrive. Around him, his crew worked in tense silence. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone was afraid. "Contact," said the sensor officer. Multiple signatures emerging from faster-than-light travel. The view screen flickered. And then the human ships appeared. Vethkai felt his stomach drop. The human vessels looked nothing like Council ships. They were ugly, brutal. Their hulls were covered in thick armor plating, scarred and dented from countless battles. They had no elegant curves, no decorative elements. They were built for one purpose only, and that purpose was violence. The largest ship, the one at the center of the formation, was named Relentless. It was painted black, and its forward section was shaped like a blade. As Vethkai watched, the ship broadcast a single message to the fleet. "This is Commander Jake Lawson of the United Earth Special Operations Division, requesting tactical data on enemy positions. Lawson out. No greeting. No diplomatic pleasantries. Just a demand for information. Send them everything we have," Vethkai ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands were not. An hour later, a shuttle detached from the Relentless and flew toward the station. Vethkai went to the docking bay to meet it personally. He brought an honor guard of 20 Valari soldiers, the finest warriors in his fleet. The shuttle landed, and its door opened with a hiss of pressure. The first human to step out was a woman. She was shorter than Vethkai had expected, with dark hair pulled back from her face. Her eyes moved constantly, scanning the docking bay, noting exits and positions. She wore black armor that seemed to absorb the light. "Lieutenant Amy Vance," she said. Her voice was calm and flat. "I am securing the area for Commander Lawson." Before Vethkai could respond, she had already moved past him, walking through the docking bay with the easy grace of a hunting animal. His honor guard shifted nervously as she passed them. Then the rest of the humans emerged. There were 12 of them in total. 12 soldiers in black armor, carrying weapons that Vethkai did not recognize. They moved differently from any species he had ever seen. Their steps were silent. Their heads turned constantly, watching everything. When they looked at the Valari soldiers, their eyes held no fear, only assessment. The last to exit was their leader. Commander Jake Lawson was a tall man with gray eyes and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He walked with the confidence of someone who had never met anything he could not kill. When he reached Vethkai, he did not bow or offer any greeting. He simply nodded. "Admiral, where can we study the enemy?" Vethkai led the humans to the station's briefing room. Along the way, crew members stopped and stared. Some of them backed away. One young technician dropped her equipment and ran in the briefing room. Vethkai showed them everything the council knew about the Kethral swarm. The holographic display showed swarm ships, swarm soldiers, swarm queens. Jake watched in silence. His soldiers took notes on small devices. When the briefing was finished, Jake spoke. "We need live specimens." Vethkai blinked. "I am sorry. Did you say live specimens?" "Yes, at least 3. We need to understand how they think, how they communicate, how they react to pain and fear. Commander, the swarm takes no prisoners. They consume everything. No one has ever captured a live Kethral." The human sergeant, a large man named Danny Cole, let out a short laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. "Then we will go get some ourselves," he said. 6 hours later, Apex Unit launched a dropship toward a moon that the swarm had recently infested. Vethkai watched the helmet feeds from the command deck, unable to look away. The moon's surface was covered in organic material. The swarm had already begun transforming it into a hive. Massive structures of flesh and chitin rose from the ground. Millions of swarm drones moved through tunnels beneath the surface. The human dropship landed on the dark side of the moon, far from the main hive. The 12 soldiers emerged and began moving toward their target. Vethkai had seen many military operations. He had studied the tactics of dozens species, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans did not march in formation. They spread out, moving through the alien landscape like shadows. They communicated in hand signals and quiet clicks. When they encountered swarm patrols, they did not engage directly. They flanked. They isolated. They struck from angles that should have been impossible. Corporal Ben Torres, the youngest member of the unit, moved ahead of the group. He found paths through the hive that the sensors had missed. He seemed to know where the enemy would be before they appeared. When the unit reached the specimen chamber, the fighting began in earnest. The swarm drones were fast and deadly, with razor-sharp claws and armored hides. They outnumbered the humans 100 to 1. It should have been a slaughter. It was. Just not the kind Vethkai expected. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They moved together, covering each other, creating kill zones that the swarm could not escape. Sergeant Cole fired a weapon that turned drones into mist. Lieutenant Vance placed shots with mechanical precision, every bullet finding a weak point. And Jake Lawson moved through the chaos like death itself. He killed with his hands when his weapons ran dry. He killed with a knife when his hands were full. He killed and did not stop. 20 minutes later, the unit extracted with 3 live Kethril specimens. When Jake returned to the station, he was covered in alien blood. Pieces of swarm flesh clung to his armor. He walked past the horrified council observers and went directly to the specimen containment area. Admiral Vethkai found him there an hour later, watching the captured swarm drones through the containment field. "How?" Vethkai asked. "How did you do that?" Jake did not turn around. "We are predators, Admiral. It is what we do. But the way you fought, the way you moved, it was like you knew exactly what they would do before they did it." Now Jake turned. His gray eyes met Vethkai's, and the Admiral felt a chill run through his body. "The swarm is a hunter," Jake said. "They think like hunters. They move like hunters. They are very good at what they do." He paused. "But they have never hunted anything like us. They have never faced a species that spent its entire existence hunting each other. We know every trick, every trap, every way to kill, and every way to survive." He turned back to the specimens. "We know how they think now. They are not so different from the things we used to hunt back home." Vethkai left the containment area with a feeling he could not name. The council had asked for soldiers. They had received something else entirely. They had received predators, and now those predators were preparing to hunt. The Sealess Cluster had once been home to 4 thriving civilizations. Now it was a graveyard. The swarm had consumed everything, leaving behind dead worlds covered in organic waste. Their hive ships moved through the cluster like a disease, spreading and growing and preparing for the next conquest. Then the humans came. The first attack happened without warning. A swarm breeding vessel, carrying thousands of larvae and a minor queen, exploded in the void. There was no battle, no fleet engagement, just a sudden, violent death. The swarm investigated and found nothing. No enemy ships, no weapon signatures, just wreckage and confusion. 3 days later, another ship died. Then another. Then 5 more. Apex unit had begun its campaign. Jake Lawson did not believe in fair fights. Fair fights were for species that had not spent 10,000 years learning how to kill efficiently. The humans attacked at night in the dark between stars. They planted explosives on hull plates. They poisoned nutrient pools. They targeted queens and commanders, leaving the lower drones confused and directionless. Corporal Lisa Nguyen was the architect of their psychological campaign. She was small and quiet, with a talent for technology that bordered on supernatural. Within a week, she had cracked the swarm's primitive communication network. "They use chemical signals and low-frequency sounds," she explained to a group of Krillax observers. "Very simple, very effective for coordination, but very easy to manipulate once you understand the patterns." She showed them her work. False signals that told hive clusters their queens were dead. Contradictory orders that sent warrior drones in circles. Panic frequencies that made entire ships tear themselves apart from the inside. "We call this psychological warfare," Lisa said. "It is not enough to kill your enemy. You must make them afraid. You must make them doubt. You must destroy their minds before you destroy their bodies." The Krillax observers said nothing. They were too horrified to speak. The campaign continued for months. Apex unit moved through the cluster like ghosts, striking and vanishing. They never fought the same way twice. They never gave the swarm time to adapt, but the war had costs. Sergeant Ryan Price died on a moon called Vera 6. The mission was supposed to be simple. Infiltrate a breeding facility. Destroy the egg chambers. Extract before the swarm could respond. Ryan was covering the team's retreat when the tunnel collapsed. Thousands of swarm drones poured through the gap, more than anyone had expected. Ryan held his position, firing until his weapons ran dry, buying time for the others to escape. When the drones finally overwhelmed him, he activated his armor's self-destruct. The explosion killed him and 300 swarm soldiers. It also sealed the tunnel, allowing the rest of the team to complete their extraction. Jake did not order a retreat. He ordered an advance. The surviving members of Apex Unit turned around and went back into the facility. They fought through every tunnel, every chamber, every nest. They killed everything that moved. They recovered Ryan's body, or what was left of it, and they burned the entire facility to ash dot when they returned to the fleet. Admiral Vethkai was waiting. "You lost a soldier," he said. "Standard doctrine would suggest withdrawal to reassess your strategy." Jake looked at him with those cold gray eyes. "You do not leave your pack behind. And we do not reassess. We adapt and we finish what we started. But the cost, the risk. Your unit is too small to sustain losses. You should preserve your strength." Lieutenant Amy Vance stepped forward. Her face was still covered in smoke and blood. "Admiral, we are humans. We have been fighting wars since before your species learned to make fire. We have lost soldiers in every conflict we have ever fought. And we have never stopped fighting because of it." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was quiet. Ryan knew what he was signing up for. He knew the risks, and he would not want us to stop. He would want us to finish the hunt. The Valari Admiral had no response. The weeks that followed were the bloodiest of the war. Apex Unit, grieving and furious, tore through the Celis cluster with a ferocity that shocked even their allies. They did not sleep. They did not rest. They hunted. Danny Cole developed new weapons using swarm biology against itself. Acid charges that melted through organic hulls. Sonic devices that drove drones into fits of madness. Biological agents that spread through hive networks like wildfire. Then Torres became the deadliest tracker in the galaxy. He could find swarm ships in the void by the pattern of their movement. He could predict queen locations by the flow of drone traffic. He moved through enemy territory like a shadow, marking targets for the rest of the unit. And through it all, Lisa Nguyen continued her psychological war. She recorded the death screams of swarm queens and broadcast them on open frequencies. She planted false memories in captured drones and released them back into the hive. She made the swarm afraid of the dark, afraid of silence, afraid of every shadow that might contain a human. The other council species watched the campaign with a mixture of awe and terror. They had wanted soldiers. They had received something far more dangerous. "They are not fighting a war," Councillor Mirthel observed during one briefing. "They are conducting an extermination. Is there a difference?" Asked a Gorath representative. "For most species, yes. War has rules, limits, acceptable losses, and acceptable victories." Mirthel shook her head slowly. Humans do not seem to recognize these concepts. For them, there is only the hunt and the kill. Should we be concerned? Mirthel was quiet for a long moment. "We should be grateful," she said finally. "Grateful that they are hunting the swarm and not us." By the end of the 6th month, the impossible had happened. The Kethral swarm, which had conquered 17 star systems without defeat, was retreating. Their expansion had stopped. Their hive ships were pulling back toward their homeworld. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the swarm was running, and behind them, tireless and relentless. The humans followed. Jake Lawson stood on the bridge of the Relentless, watching the tactical display. The swarm's retreat was orderly but unmistakable. They were scared. Amy joined him at the display. "What now, Commander?" Jake's expression did not change. "Now we finish it. We follow them home and we end this. The Council may want to negotiate. Accept the swarm's withdrawal as victory. The Council did not lose Ryan. The council did not watch 17 worlds die. Jake turned to face her. We do not negotiate with predators. We kill them. All of them. Amy nodded. She had expected nothing else. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere ahead, the swarm was running. And somewhere behind them, a small team of human hunters was preparing for the final chase. The hunt was not over. It was just beginning. In the heart of the Kethral homeworld, deep beneath layers of organic armor and living stone, the Hive Queen Sithax dreamed she was the oldest of her kind. She had lived for 3,000 years. She had consumed 100 species and absorbed their memories into her vast consciousness. She was the mother of billions, the mind behind the swarm, the hunger that drove the expansion across the stars. And for the first time in her ancient existence, she was afraid. The memories came to her through the Hive network. Every drone that died sent its final thoughts back to the Queen. Every queen that fell shared her last moments with Sithax. And what those memories showed her was beyond comprehension. The humans, Sithax had consumed the memories of many predators. She understood hunting. She understood killing. She understood the simple logic of predator and prey. But the humans did not follow that logic. They did not hunt for food. The swarm consumed its enemies to grow. The humans left their kills to rot. They did not hunt for territory. The swarm expanded to claim new worlds. The humans destroyed hive ships and then moved on without claiming anything. They hunted for revenge. Sithax did not understand revenge. It was an alien concept, a waste of resources. Why pursue an enemy that could no longer threaten you? Why spend energy on something that gave no benefit? But the memories showed her the truth. The humans remembered their dead. They carried the faces of fallen comrades into every battle. They used grief as fuel, turning loss into rage and rage into action. They were persistence predators. The term came from the memories of a captured human, a scout that her warriors had managed to overwhelm before it could activate its self-destruct. Sithax had consumed its mind, searching for weakness. What she found instead was a species that had evolved to chase prey across any distance, over any time until the hunt ended. They did not stop. They did not tire. They simply kept coming. Sithax made her decision. For the first time in Kethral history, the swarm would offer peace. The message was sent through captured communication arrays. It was addressed to the human commander, the one called Jake Lawson. The terms were simple. The swarm would withdraw from council space. They would return to their own territory. They would never attack the council again. All the humans had to do was stop hunting. The response came 3 days later. It was not what Sithax expected. On the bridge of the Relentless, Jake Lawson read the swarm's offer. His officers gathered around him, waiting for his response. The council had already sent messages urging acceptance. The war could be over. The galaxy could be saved. Jake deleted the message. Commander? Lieutenant Amy Vance's voice was carefully neutral. The council is strongly suggesting we accept the terms. The council was not there when the swarm consumed 17 worlds. Jake's voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent bridge. The council did not watch billions of people die. The council did not bury Ryan Price. The war could be over. The war is already over. The swarm just does not know it yet. Jake turned to face his crew. They ate 17 worlds, 17 civilizations, billions of lives that will never come back. And they think they can just walk away. No one answered. We are not soldiers, Jake continued. The council made that mistake when they called us. They thought we would fight like them. Follow rules. Accept limits. Make peace when it was convenient. He shook his head slowly. We are hunters, and hunters do not stop until the prey is dead. The message was sent back to the swarm. It contained one word. No. 3 hours later, Jake addressed the entire Allied fleet. "You asked us for soldiers," he said. His image appeared on view screens across hundreds of ships. "You got something else. You got humans. And we do not stop until the hunt is over." The council was furious. Counselor Mirathel sent message after message, demanding explanation. Admiral Vethkai requested an emergency meeting. Even the Krillaks, who had stayed neutral throughout the war, expressed concern about continuing the conflict. Jake ignored all of them. The final assault was planned in secret. Jake called it Operation Reckoning. Every human vessel would participate. Every member of Apex unit would lead ground teams. And they would have help. When word of the rejected peace offer reached Earth, something unexpected happened. Volunteers began arriving. They came from every nation on the planet. Former soldiers and active duty troops. Pilots and engineers and medical staff. They heard about the war, heard about the swarm, heard about what the humans were doing out in the stars. And they demanded to join. 3,000 volunteers in the first week. 10,000 by the end of the month. The council watched in disbelief as transport after transport arrived from Earth. These were not elite soldiers like Apex Unit. They were ordinary humans. Teachers who had served in their nation's military. Farmers who knew how to shoot. Office workers who had trained for years in combat sports. They came because their species was at war. They came because they wanted to help. They came because, on some deep level, they understood what the humans of Apex Unit understood. They were predators. And predators did not abandon the hunt. Jake met with the volunteer commanders in the briefing room of the Relentless. He looked at their faces, young and old, scared and determined. They reminded him of himself, years ago, before his first war. "You know what you are signing up for," he said. "Many of you will not come home." A young woman in the front row nodded. "We know, sir." "Then why are you here?" The woman smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Because Ryan Price was one of us. Because the swarm killed 17 worlds. Because someone needs to make them pay." She paused. "And because this is what we do." Jake felt something he had not felt in a long time. Pride. "Then let us finish this." On the Kethril homeworld, Hive Queen Sithax felt the human fleet approaching. Thousands of ships, filled with tens of thousands of predators, all coming for her. She had ordered a full defensive formation. Every warrior drone in the swarm surrounded the homeworld. Billions of soldiers ready to fight. It was the largest military force in galactic history. It would not be enough. Sithax knew this. She had consumed enough human memories to understand. The humans would not stop. They would not accept losses and retreat. They would keep coming until either the swarm was dead or every human was killed. And there were always more humans. For the first time in 3,000 years. The Hive Queen of the Kethril swarm, prepared for the possibility of extinction, thought the hunt was coming, and there was nowhere left to run. The Kethril homeworld was not a planet. It was a living organism. Millions of years ago, the swarm had consumed their original world and rebuilt it in their image. Now, it was a massive sphere of organic matter, pulsing with the heartbeat of 1 billion drones. Towers of flesh and chitin reached toward the stars. Rivers of nutrients flowed through channels the size of cities. And at its core, protected by layers of armor and millions of warriors, sat Hive Queen Sithax. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the system and stopped. For 3 days, nothing happened. The swarm watched. The humans watched. The allied species, who had followed at a distance, watched both. Then the attack began. It was not like any battle the galaxy had ever seen. The humans did not advance in formation. They did not target military installations. They did not follow any strategy the council tacticians could recognize. They attacked everywhere at once, Suicide ships, piloted by volunteers who knew they would not survive, crashed into the defensive perimeter. They were filled with explosives, with biological weapons, with nuclear devices. Each ship that died took dozens of swarm vessels with it. While the swarm reeled from the suicide attacks, the main fleet struck from unexpected angles. Human ships emerged from behind asteroids, from inside gas clouds, from places the swarm had not thought to guard. They hit hard and moved on, never staying long enough to be caught. And in the chaos, the dropships launched. Apex Unit led the ground assault. Jake Lawson was first out of the shuttle, his boots hitting the organic surface of the homeworld. Behind him came Amy, Danny, Ben, Lisa, and the rest of his soldiers. Behind them came 3,000 volunteers, armed and angry and ready to die. The surface of the homeworld was a nightmare. Swarm drones poured from every hole, every crevice, every shadow. The air was thick with chemical signals and the screaming of dying creatures. The ground itself seemed to fight against them, shifting and grabbing at their feet. The humans did not slow down. Danny Cole carried a weapon that fired concentrated plasma. He cut a path through the drones, leaving molten flesh in his wake. When the weapon overheated, he dropped it and pulled out a blade the length of his arm. Lisa Nguyen stayed close to the command group, her equipment broadcasting false signals into the Hive network. Drones attacked each other. Warriors forgot their orders. Entire defensive lines collapsed from confusion. Then Torres moved ahead of the main force, finding paths through the maze of organic tunnels. He was injured within the first hour, a claw tearing through his armor and into his side. He refused to stop. "I am not dying until we kill that queen," he said through gritted teeth. "You can evacuate me after." The battle lasted for hours. The humans pushed deeper into the homeworld, fighting through layers of defenders. They lost soldiers with every step. Volunteers fell by the dozens, then by the hundreds. But for every human that died, 1,000 swarm drones were killed. Finally, they reached the Queen's chamber. It was a massive space, larger than any building on Earth. The walls were made of living tissue, pulsing with the rhythms of the hive mind. And at the center, surrounded by her personal guard, sat Hive Queen Sithax. She was enormous. Her body filled half the chamber, a mountain of chitin and flesh that had not moved in 1,000 years. Hundreds of tendrils connected her to the walls, feeding her information from every corner of the swarm. Her eyes, dozens of them, fixed on the human soldiers at the entrance. Jake stepped forward. His armor was cracked and stained with blood, both human and alien. His weapons were nearly empty. He had been fighting for 12 straight hours without rest. He had never felt more alive. "Hive Queen Sithax," he said. "This is Commander Jake Lawson of Earth. Your swarm consumed 17 of our allied worlds. Today, we are here to collect the debt." The Queen's voice came through a translator, artificial and cold. "You have won. The swarm will withdraw. We will never threaten your galaxy again. I know. Then, why continue? Why risk more of your soldiers? You have already achieved victory." Jake raised his weapon, because victory was never the point. Sithax's eyes widened slightly. It was the closest her species could come to showing fear. "Then what do you want?" "I want you to understand something before you die." Jake's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You are not the first predator we have faced. You will not be the last. But every predator that comes after you will hear this story. They will hear what happened to the swarm, and they will know what awaits them if they threaten us or our allies." The Queen's tendrils twitched. "What are you?" Jake smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We are what happens when a death world makes something that refuses to die." He fired. The first shot took Sithax in the central eye cluster. The Queen screamed, a sound that echoed through the entire hive network. Across the homeworld, across the fleet, across every swarm soldier in the galaxy, that scream was heard that the Apex unit opened fire. Amy, Danny, Lisa, and the others poured everything they had into the Queen. The volunteers joined in, their weapons adding to the storm of destruction. Sithax tried to fight back. Her personal guard rushed to defend her. Her tendrils lashed out at the attackers. But it was too late. The humans were inside her defenses, and they would not stop. The Queen fell. The moment Sithax died, the Hive network collapsed. Across the galaxy, swarm drones went still. Warriors stopped fighting. Ships drifted without direction. The mind that had connected them all, the consciousness that had driven their expansion for 3,000 years, was gone. The Kethril swarm was extinct. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council held a ceremony to honor the human soldiers. It was held on Vareth Prime, in the Great Hall where the Council had first voted to contact Earth. Representatives from every species attended. The mood was strange. There was relief. There was gratitude. But there was also something else. Something that looked very much like fear. Jake Lawson stood at the front of the hall with the survivors of Apex Unit. Amy was beside him, along with Danny and Lisa. Ben was there too, in a medical chair. He had survived his injuries, but he would never fight again. Councilor Mirathel gave a speech. She spoke of the human sacrifice, the human courage, the human victory. She thanked them for saving the galaxy. When she finished, Admiral Vethkai approached Amy. "Will you return to Earth now?" he asked. "Will your people return to peace?" Amy looked at the Admiral for a long moment. Then she turned to watch her commander, who was speaking quietly with Ben. She watched Lisa, who was already reviewing data about potential threats on the galaxy's edge. She watched Danny, who was laughing at some joke with a group of volunteers. "We do not return to peace," she said finally. "We just wait for the next hunt." Vethkai had no response. The human ships departed that evening. They flew in formation, the Relentless at the lead, heading back toward the small blue planet they called home. The Council watched them go with mixed emotions. Zetheron, who had sent the first message to Earth, stood with Mirathel as the human fleet disappeared into the void. "We asked for soldiers," he said quietly. "We received something else entirely." Mirathel nodded. "We received predators, and now they have a taste for hunting among the stars." Zetheron's voice was troubled. "What happens when they decide that we are prey?" The old Darvani was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Then we hope that the galaxy never gives them a reason to hunt us." Far away, on the edge of known space, the last human transport entered faster than light travel. Inside, 3,000 volunteers were returning home. They were tired. They were wounded. Many of them had lost friends, but they were alive. And they had won. In the depths of the void, in places the Council had never explored, other predators watched and waited. They had seen what the swarm had done. They had seen it fail. And now they knew that there was something in the galaxy that even predators should fear. A small blue planet called Earth. A species that called themselves humans. The predators, no one survives.